So I just want to talk a bit about the use of food, training dogs with food. And I'm not talking about all dogs, because there are some dogs that aren't necessarily motivated by food, even though they can be, by restricting and by, choosing how we introduce all food to that dog. We can generate a motivation, but it isn't necessarily naturally as high a motivation for food for that dog as for a lot of others that are very, very food focused, food driven. And I just want to talk about the use of it, and when I particularly or personally use it, where I see a benefit and where I see that it's a problematic or even a block or a bar to learning and to progressing. So most people like to see a dog that's bouncing along with its tail wagging and all sorts of jolly sort of posture as it's moving along. That's what they like to see. That's what your general pet owners like to see in a dog, because it's termed to be happy, or it's deemed as being happy. Depending on the circumstances, I personally would say that that dog's in a state of arousal, and that it can either be a benefit or it can be a hindrance, depending on what it is that we're looking at doing. So if I'm working a dog for recall, and I'm starting to instill a recall progress into a dog, or an understanding of a recall, then I'll use food. I'll restrict and I will use food, or I'll use toys if I've got toy motivated dogs, and heavy praise and things like that. And it will come in thick and fast to start off with, because I want that dog's state of arousal to rise. I want speed. When they turn, I want speed. I want them thinking, is he going to, when they're out and about. I want them to hear the sound of the whistle or the sound of your voice and think, yeah, you got to get back, motivate. Speed. When I've got a dog that's walking through town on a lead at the side of me, that's the last thing I want. I don't want a dog that's in a high state of arousal. I don't want a dog that's thinking, is he going to. I don't want a dog that's bouncing along. You don't see it really, in most dogs walking through towns or just going for walks with people. They're not like trotting along like this with their tails going and, oh, am I going to get this? Unless they're being repeatedly, or have a heavy history of being repeatedly rewarded with primarily food for performing that behaviour. But here's the thing. One is an active behaviour, right? The recall is an active behaviour. It requires speed. It's the same as sending out. If I want to send you out to a specific location, to a specific target, and I want it fast and I want you enthusiastic when you're doing it, then I'm going to use food and I'm going to motivate you for that. When I'm talking about things like sending you to a bed to remain in there, sitting and staying, down and staying, walking nicely to heel, alongside of me, giving things up for me, whatever, those sort of behaviours, they're not necessarily active behaviours. They're not behaviours that require a high level of fuel injection to get you doing them. I just want them done. Most people just want them done. I'm excluding sport dog workers, people who are doing competitions, and people who are into their sort of training of their dogs to display something. I'm taking those people aside. I'm talking about general dog owners pretty much want a dog that I can walk through town. I can take it down the beach and let it off. I can take it to the park and let it off. It comes back when I tell it to. It walks nicely with me. It doesn't jump up at children. It doesn't bark and lunge after people when they're in the home. You just want a dog, when I say go to bed, you go and lay down, pretty chilled out, if you like, a nice, easy, chilled out dog that's fun to be around when you want them to be, but calm the rest of the time. And when you're talking about behaviours that are like non-active behaviours, so where I don't require speed and I don't require the fuel injection, then the way that I personally teach the dog that is through the enforcement of boundaries. I teach limitations. If the dog goes wrong, I'll correct you. I'll show you what's required, but I will correct you. I will correct the behaviour that was wrong. I won't ignore it. I won't sort of wait until you offer something different and then reward that instead. I won't do that, because me personally, I believe that most dog owning people simply do not have the time, the timing, or the inclination to follow the extensive training protocols that so many trainers put forward for them. All right, so take an example. I was watching a video on YouTube the other day of a guy that was training a dog, and I think it took, and this is a professional trainer, right, training this dog, and I think it took the person it came up on the screen, 36 or 37 attempts to open the front door before that Labrador didn't dive out ahead of him, right, didn't pull him out the door. 36 or 37 times on a single visit before it didn't pull him out. Prior to that, the dog had been walked around the kitchen and it had been walked around the living room and it had been fed for not pulling and fed for not pulling. Then we come to the 36 or 37 times before you leave the door. Who the hell has got the time in their life to put that amount of basically pointless effort into teaching a dog not to pull me out the door? Ultimately, you open the front door, the dog goes to lunge, you check the dog back. Do you know what I mean? You correct the dog. I would correct the dog. That was wrong. Then I'll close the door. Then I'll open the door again and see if you go for it. If you go for it, I'll correct you again. If you sit there, I'll give you a smooth, but I'm not going to, good boy, good girl, good boy. I don't want to bring your level up. I don't want to bring your arousal, your emotions, if you like. I don't want to bring it up. I want to keep it where it is. That's exactly what I want. I don't want a dog that when I open the door necessarily, they're looking at me going, can I, Dad, can I, Dad, can I go now, can I go now? I don't want that. I just want a dog that's going to sit there. I open the door, let's go, walk. We go outside, we go down the path. If you pull ahead of me, I'll correct you back and we'll change directions and I'll let you know, good boy, good girl, calmly, that what you're doing now is right. And I know that you can get the behaviour. I understand that you can get the behaviour. You can get a dog that will walk nicely on a lead by rewarding, by using food for the positions and for the behaviour that you want. I get that. But when you look at those dogs, when you look at dogs that are being taught in that way, their level of arousal is higher than it is required to be. You don't need a dog that's up there with expectancy, hope, frustration, whatever it happens to be. You just want the dog to realise this is what I do. When I go to my bed, yeah, it looks nice if you can send a dog to bed, and they belt it. They belt it from one part of the house to the other, and they hit the bed so fast that the blanket goes skidding all over the place, and you come in and they're dum 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 dum, tail thumping, looking at you, have I done good, have I done good, have I done good? You know, waiting for the reward, waiting for the reward. It looks great. But in reality, go to bed, walk over there, get into it, curl down, lie down, stay until such a time as I tell you that you're now to come off of the bed. That's what most people are after. That's what most want to look nice for your friends. Look at this, look how fast they do this. But ultimately, where's your dog? They're over there, look, asleep on the blanket. That's better. That's better as I walk in and you can call them off. Oh, come over and say hello. I don't need to, I just want you to go over there and chill out. I want you to relax. It's a non-active behaviour. I just want you to do nothing. I don't want you thinking, am I going to get paid for it? I'm doing this because I have a history of getting paid for it. No, you're doing this because you have a history of realising that you have to do this. And this whole don't ever correct a dog. Do you know what I mean? This whole sort of like redirect or divert or use interrupter. This term interrupters. I mean, what the... Well, don't get me on it. Use interrupters, turn your back on the dog, avoid until they do something that's more beneficial, something that you can reward, something that you can then strengthen through reinforcement. And I'll call myself a science-based trainer, a modern science-based trainer for doing that, because I've plucked aspects of the last 3/4 of a century of science, or a century of science if you like, the bits that I like, and I've said, yeah, we'll use those in isolation, and that makes me morally and ethically superior to anybody else who takes the whole of it and says, equally, that was wrong, correction, that was wrong, correction, that was right, well done, reward, if you want to. If it's a behaviour that requires reward, if it's a behaviour that requires motivation and requires enthusiasm above a level that you term to be baseline. But the vast majority of behaviours that people have don't require that. You know, and there are not enough people saying about the limitations and the uses of reward, what you will get. You won't get a calm dog with reward. You won't get it. You'll get a dog. I say you won't get it, right? So I'm not gonna absolutely make this broadsheet statement that covers absolutely every dog. Some dogs that you can take from scratch that are of a particular nature are just like that anyway. You don't need to necessarily be, they're just dogs that are quite happy to slot back into a particular place in their life, a place in your family, and accept it. And they're never going to be dogs that would be necessarily overactive anyway. But I'm talking about the sort of dogs where people have driven, where you've got working line dogs, working breeds that have then been morphed into pet homes or taken on by pet families, following protocols which they consider to be the right thing to do, because I'm never actually doing anything wrong to the dog as I see it, or as I'm told it is. You know, correction is wrong. Giving the dog a jerk on a lead, or to a dog, you know, or anything like that, if it jumps up at me, is wrong. I shouldn't do that. I should just turn my back and ignore it, and then when its four paws go on the ground, I should turn around and tell it what a good dog it is and give it some food. It's just not, it's not an answer in itself, I suppose, is where I'm going. There is a huge use for reward when you are looking at driving and powering behaviours, but when you're looking at behaviours that require the dog to restrain itself, I suppose, and to just accept that this is, then reward isn't the way to go.